Sean here with BaseMint Classics, and it's time for another Corner Box Classics. And like the great Stanley always said, every issue is someone's first issue. So this Corner Box Classic thing started years back. I mean, the show didn't because the channel is relatively new, but I started years ago reading all of my comics in release date order throughout the years, and I'm in April of 1982, and so I've always biked up to comic book stores. And so today, especially since it's 1 degree outside, we're going to pretend that I biked up to the comic book store on April 13th, 1982, and these are the books that I would have picked up. So it's a little time travel thing to the days gone by as I make my way through my collection of comics. So, first up, Defenders, number 109, Vengeance Cries the Valkyrie, released April 13th, 1982, written by Mark Grunwald and J.M. DeMatteis, with pencils by Don Perlin, inks by Joe Sinnott, letters by Shelley Lefferman, and colors by George Roussos. If you've been paying attention, Defenders is, I like it, but it's also, it would definitely, if it were today, like, it's a weird book, but that's kind of the charm. Like, I really enjoy, as I dub them, big dumb comics. Like, the crazier that a comic book gets and the more, you read comics, you know, the more comic booky stuff gets, the more I enjoy it. Like, if I'm like, I can't really explain that in a rational world, then I'm all about it. So obviously, like, the entire time that we've known Valkyrie, she's been the body of, why am I losing her name right now? I want to say Barbara Norris, but for some odd reason, Bobby Morse is sticking in my head. But I know that Bobby Morse is Mockingbird, so it's got to be Barbara Norris. Anyways, she has gone up against the Enchantress, and is now, Brunhild is finally back in her Valkyrie body. And so Spider-Man is along for the ride, Beast, Doctor Strange, and Gargoyle. The rest of the team is on, like, another dimension. So Valkyrie is, like, finally unleashed from this, and she's like, I've got it. I'm going to handle the Enchantress. And so the two of them get in a fight while the rest of the gang, Gargoyle, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Beast, take on, like, Enchantress's lackeys, I guess, which Beast quickly realizes, like, aren't Norse gods. They're, like, Greek serpents. So he puts together that they're actually, like they're not actually the Beast. They've kind of been changed into it. So Valkyrie is able to, like, pull out the Enchantress's energy and kind of trap it into this, like, crystal thing. So she's finally got her vengeance, and she winds up giving it to Doctor Strange, and he's like, hey, let's beat feet and get out of here now that you've defeated the Enchantress. But she's like, absolutely not. I'm going after Odin to figure out why he didn't come after me. And so then we have this great, you know, very wordy, but I don't mind it because I appreciate comics of old being kind of a, you know, you used to, like, as I was growing up reading comic books, it didn't take you 3 minutes to read one. It, like, felt like you're watching a great show or a really good movie. Took some time, you know, you learn some things. Anyways, so basically Odin's like, sorry, I was worried about the Celestials. I couldn't do anything about you. And so Valkyrie's like, well, I guess you're a flawed god, and sort of forgives him and kind of moves on. And then we cut to the other gang of Defenders in an alternate dimension, Son of Satan, Namor, Hulk, and they kind of, like, it's sort of just a one-page interlude where they like land somewhere in this dimension, and they are met with, like, kind of one of those panels. I mean, you can see it right here, where they're like, they see who the character is that they're shocked by, but we, the reader, do not. And so then the gang gets back with Hellcat, and Hellcat decides that she's gonna go search for her father and figure out if he actually is Satan again. Defenders is a weird book. Comics, man. I don't know. And then it ends with like that group of like Doctor Strange basically going to find the other group of interdimensionally displaced defenders, and he finds them, and he finds them, spoiler for a book that's, 43 years old, he finds them with a new Nighthawk. Is it our Nighthawk that died? I don't know, but it's a new costume. So there's the cliffhanger for this issue of Defenders. And I glossed over the part where Gargoyle and Spider-Man were like, we're taking off, and that's important for the rest of the books. So Spider-Man and Gargoyle split when they got back to Earth from Asgard. Up next, Fantastic Four 244, Beginnings and Endings, released April 13th, 1982, written, penciled, and inked by the great John Byrne, letters by Jim Novak, and colors by Glennis Ween Oliver. Come on, Byrne, you couldn't do everything in this issue? So, Galactus has come to Earth. The great, I think it's 243. It's the one where all the heroes are fighting Galactus. I have a little statue of it upstairs. So this opens up in Frankie Ray's apartment with her roommate, Juliet D'Angelo, doing a workout. And I do not want to stress don't focus on, when I show you the panel, don't focus on Juliet. Focus on the background, okay? This is one of the reasons why John Byrne is my favorite, okay? Look at the records, the books, the record player, the cup of tea or coffee with the steam coming off of it. There's like a little decoration up there. You can see the record player. Anyways, point is, I love John Byrne's attention to detail in backgrounds. And I don't mean to like slag off new comics, but legitimately, if this book was made today, that background everything would be kind of like just blocky and sort of not, that's a lot of detail. That took him some time, and I appreciate that. Like, it's what sets it above the rest. Anyways, she gets a knock at the door, and she is met by a very haggard-looking Johnny Storm, who shows up at the door, very distraught, collapses. I also love this, like, they do a really good job. Again, I harp on this all the time, but it's one of the things that I really think is missing from like current comic books is they do a great job of building the world in the aspect of like, there's a lot, I give a rip about Frankie Ray's roommate. Like, I like Juliet D'Angelo. And one of the things that I really love about Cap right now in that run is the people living in his brownstone. I care about that just as much as I care about the superhero punch-up stuff. Sometimes, if not more. And I just really like the fact that they make the universe seem a little bit more fleshed out. And it's not just like, constant crisis after crisis. And I mean, this is a crisis. Galactus is dying in New York, and Johnny is clearly upset about something. But I like here's just Frankie Ray's roommate, like nursing him back to health with some tea and stuff. I don't know. It's just quiet moments like that in between the big comic book stuff. Really does it for me. And they do it well. During this time period. So she figures out that she should probably reach out to Sue and Reed, which I think is hilarious. That like, I know that you can just call the Baxter Building and get like a robotic secretary, but I do think it's hilarious that like, she's just like, oh, I'll just call up Reed Richards and Sue Richards. So, plus it always throws me off because like when they answer that, she opens the door and like lets him in, and she calls her the Invisible Girl. And I'm so used to Sue being the Invisible Woman that it still kind of throws me, like that she hasn't hit that point yet. I know it's coming, but anyways, as Sue tends to her brother Reed, like Juliet's basically like, what's going on with my roommate? And Reed's like, oh, you don't know the fate of Frankie? And it's just such a, like, come on, Reed. Like, little bedside manner there, pal. Like, he's just like, the fate of Frankie. It's ridiculous. So this then turns into a bit of we get a flashback. We get a shrinking Galactus. Take that, Fantastic Four movie fans that didn't think he was big enough in the movie. Fantastic Four movie was great. It's one of my favorite MCU films. So there he is shrinking. And you kind of get a recap of the Terrax and the heroes taking on Galactus. And then the argument begins between Reed, Cap, and Iron Man about whether or not they should be saving the life of Galactus. Iron Man is strongly opposed. Cap and Reed are obviously on the side of, hey, he's a sentient being. We don't kill. We need to help him. And so they sort of figure this out and get to work on basically raiding the Stark International closet for parts to build this machine to revive Galactus. And they use Thor's power to help do it. They do that, and then Reed is basically taking him back to the Baxter building because he's going to use the stuff that he's got at the Baxter building to find uninhabited, energy-rich planets that would satiate Galactus, but not kill sentient life. And so he does, and this is where it just goes. This is where it goes off the rails, and I was not prepared for Frankie Ray. Because Frankie, like, Reed finds this, and he's basically, like, Galactus is like, he's like, I got, like, 6 or 7 planets lined up that, like, fit your needs. You just got to get to them. Like, scram and go find these. And he's like, I don't have the, like, you just brought me basically back to, you could have killed me, but you brought me kind of back to life. I don't have the energy to make it to those planets, so gonna have to eat Earth. So then, out of nowhere, Frankie Ray pops up, and she's like, hey, I want to be your herald. And she's like, she makes the same, she's like, I've heard about Silver Surfer and how he saved Zenla, and, like, I want to make you the same offer. Like, I'll become your herald, and you spare Earth, which I still don't know how that means that he's going to get enough energy. I don't know. Maybe Frankie Ray's going to be powerful enough to, like, throw him over her shoulder and blast off to outer space. But whatever, comics. So Johnny starts freaking out. And this, like, I do, like, legitimately in this moment, I feel bad. Having read concurrently Fantastic Four from the very beginning, I got to admit, I spent most of my youth just hearing tale of Johnny being, like, a ladies' man and all that stuff. And I mean, it's there, but, like, he kind of gets some bum relationship. Like, Crystal leaves him for Quicksilver, and I don't know, and I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'm pretending to be a child of 1982. So I don't want to comment on future relationships for Johnny, but not a great track record is what I'm saying. And so Johnny's basically like, hey, you don't know what you're doing. And so is Reed. Reed's like, you don't want to do this. Like, eventually he's going to eat those 6 or 7 planets we found. And then it's going to be on you, Frankie, to go and find him planets that's probably going to have sentient life. And this is where I'm like, Frankie Ray, man, because when Reed says this, she goes, so a few less bug-eyed monsters, what's that compared to my being able to get out of here or to go out there? What's a couple of bug-eyed monsters? Listen, man, Frankie Ray sucks. Like, I don't. One of the things that I really loved about Dan Slott's Silver Surfer run, Dan Slott and Mike Allred's Silver Surfer run from a few years back, it's probably longer than a few years back, but I pretend that it was like 1995 was 5 years ago to me, was meeting all of, the Doctor Who-ness of it and meeting all of these aliens. And I'm a big Star Trek fan, and so, the Prime Directive is strong in this one. And so Frankie Ray, man, Because she's like, I don't care. I just get to go and blast off and flame on through the stars. Like Galactus at least is like, I'm just eating, just nature taking its course. So right now, Frankie Ray is more evil than Galactus. So he imbues her with the cosmic powers. Everything sucks. Johnny chases after her, but I mean, she's imbued with cosmic powers, so she can get out of there much farther than. So then there's this sad panel of him like chasing after her and then falling back to Earth after he basically runs out of oxygen, and it is an absolute bummer. So then Galactus gets out of there. And so then we cut back to the apartment, and like, basically everyone's like, Johnny, we got to get you out of here. And Juliet is like, she's basically like Johnny is bummed, and she's like, hey, no problem. I mean, if you ever need a shoulder to cry on, the number. And so that part did crack me up, because I was like, Juliet has just legitimately heard about how her roommate has been turned into like a space god. And she's like, yeah, I could move in on my roommate's god. Like, that counts, right? She's not coming back for it. This is clearly a breakup. And so then she's kind of left in her apartment to ponder. This is what it was like in New York in 1982. 1 minute you're jazzercising to your albums. And then the next minute you're like hanging out with the Fantastic Four and hearing about how your roommate just helped spare the Earth because she's going to go off and eat bug-eyed monsters. So then we get a couple of prologues. One is Reed buys the Baxter building. Like, Stark International comes, helps out rebuild the top 2 floors. And Mr. Collins, the owner of the Baxter building at this time, a thorn in the Fantastic Four's side during this time period, is ready to evict them once again. But, Reed goes like, I simply exercised the option I had written into the contract when we were forced by bankruptcy to sell our headquarters to Collins, which happened way back in Fantastic Four number 9, if I remember. And it could be like 1 or 2, but I think Fantastic Four number 9 is one of my favorite issues from the 60s, if I'm correct, and I'm not going to run over there and check right now. But I think issue number 9 is where they like sell the movie rights to the Fantastic Four, and like Namor buys them. 60s comics were fantastic. So that does that, and while Mr. Collins takes off with his big fat check, I was getting text from Reed winds up calling the embassy at Latveria because they have Dr. Doom in like a cryo chamber, and so they're like, hey, we're gonna drop off the body to you guys, and it is revealed that there is another Doom in Latvia. So is the tune in to find out which Doom is the real Doom. Then we get prologue 2, which is Sue's going to do a talk show interview with Barbara Walker, which I imagine is Barbara Walters. And so Thing is being left with Franklin and a robot, like they didn't learn their lesson from Herbie, to watch Franklin. And they're working on a Rubik's Cube, and Thing leaves the room, and suddenly Franklin's mutant powers manifest. And so we are left with, next issue, perhaps the most heart-rending FF saga ever, Childhood's End. So that's a pretty great issue. Definitely not a Frankie Ray fan. That is for sure. What a scumbag. Bug-eyed monsters. Up next, Iron Man number 160, A Cry of Beast, released April 13th, 1982, written by Denny O'Neil, with pencils by Steve Ditko, inks by Dan Green, letters by Rick Parker, and colors by Don Warfield. I gotta say, so I opened this page up like Jan, because I was like, I don't know, and I'm not a scholar or an expert on any of this. I am just going off of my very tired brain because I am in charge of a 3-year-old. And like, I don't recall Steve Ditko ever drawing Iron Man before, so when I saw Steve Ditko's name in the credits, I was pretty jazzed because I was like, oh, cool, a Steve Ditko drawn Iron Man, that'll be fun. And Steve Ditko could have drawn a ton of Iron Man, but me, since this is me going through my collection, this is the first time that Steve Ditko is drawing Iron Man for me. Personally, for me. And so I opened it up, and holy smokes, there is this gnarly page here where Tony looks dreadful, and I was like, geez, Steve, what happened? Then I looked in the credits, and this splash page is done by Marie Severin, and I was like, I love Marie Severin's artwork. What happened here? And then I realized, and when I turned the page, they got me. The splash page was a nightmare where Tony was having a nightmare that he was drinking. And so clearly he's meant to be drawn kind of like one of Frankie Ray's bug-eyed monsters, because, it's a nightmare, and that's how it goes. So Stark's getting ready for as Stark does, he's getting ready for a party, and then we cut to the scene of the party, and one of the guards at one of the gates he recognizes this person in a cloak as his wife, and then that person crushes him to death. And I was like, well, I don't think that's his wife. Who knows, though? So then we got to the party, and Tony is there with a up-and-coming Hollywood starlet who is a bit of a lush, and she's having a go at it. And I know that I'm drawing a blank on I think it's been David Michelini's run up to this point of Iron Man, and I still think it is. I don't know, and I didn't do any research, because that's what you get at BaseMint Comics, little research. I don't think this is the start of the Denny O'Neil run. I know that's coming. I know that's after David Michelini, and I know from things that I've read, interviews that I've seen, that Denny O'Neil, oh boy, I could really be talking out of turn here, so don't hold this against me, Mr. O'Neil, if you by some weird happenstance stumble across this. But I believe that Denny O'Neil is a recovering alcoholic. And I believe from an interview that I read years ago that he didn't think that the Demon in a Bottle story was handled correctly, because it was just sort of like, hey, Tony's an alcoholic, and I'm gonna quit, I'm all better, which, a very long, so I could understand if he was, why it would be something that he would want to tackle in a more, not just wrap it up in like a 2-issue storyline, which I totally get. So the Tony's alcoholism in this party, like as he's being offered drinks and stuff like that, is kind of hit a lot harder, and I'm leaning towards being correct in what I think I read in an interview years and years ago as being true. Tony gets kind of annoyed with this Hollywood starlet because she's drinking, and so basically that's what he's dealing with in the first couple of issues. Then we realize that those people in the cloaks are on the cover it says Serpent Squad, and they're called, so maybe they hadn't rattled out being the Serpent Society yet, but I know them as the Serpent Society. So this party is at like the zoo, and so they let a bunch of animals loose. And Vic Martinelli, the head of Stark Security, calls him up, and he's like, hey man, like there's like one of our guards is dead. And so Tony ditches the lush, dons the armor, and goes to head out. So there's some Steve Ditko Iron Man for you. And basically the next few, obviously, like it's, they're dealing with escaped animals from the zoo and the Serpent Society or Serpent Squad, and they're trying to get they're basically trying to like steal some information. Why from the zoo? Who knows? I'm sure it was explained, but they've got this gun that kind of like, if they zap you with it, you're basically toast after this. So they've got the Hollywood starlet, and they're going after Tony, and I'm drawing a blank on who this member of the Serpent Squad is, but one of them can kind of like make you see someone else, which is why the guard saw his wife, and so suddenly she messes with Tony's mind, so he's seen Bethany Cabe, and then she changes into Pepper Potts, and he's like, wait, the guard saw his wife, we have like, he said his wife's name right before he died. They learned, I skipped over this, they learned that she was in another state, so it didn't make any sense. And so he's clearly like, oh, she's got some powers that are affecting my mind, so this is the bad guy. And right then she zaps him with the little ray gun that they've stolen from the zoo. It was late when I read this. And so thankfully Tony has his armor on, so it doesn't kill him, but it kind of messes him up a little bit. And so he knocks her out, and then it's basically that he's he's like, oh, I'm wounded, but glad I stopped these chuckleheads. And then he pans over, and the alcoholic Hollywood starlet is having a rough go of it. And so I think this was, like I said, it was more of a like, look at what alcohol does to you in excess or whatever. So good Iron Man. Like it was fun. It was nice to see Steve Ditko draw Iron Man. I've been enjoying, like, Iron Man was not necessarily, like, I didn't really read a ton of Iron Man as a kid. I got into Iron Man, obviously through the movie was the big, I'd get issues here and there when there were big events or crossovers with the X-Men and stuff. But it wasn't really until the movie. And then I'd have issues here and there. And it was like one night I was reading like the Doom Quest story. And it like clicked where I was like, I bet you this is a great, like, I've always heard good things about the Bob Layton, David Michelini run. So I was like, I'm going to search that out and pick up those issues. And I did, and it's been a blast. So, there's that. And so, that's a good issue. All right. Marvel Team Up, number 119. Time Run Like a Freight Train, released April 13th, 1982. Written by J.M. DeMatteis. Pencils by Kerry Gremmel. Inks by Mike Esposito. Letters by Jim Novak. And colors by Bob Sharon. This picks up immediately after Defenders number 109. Like, legitimately, that's them swinging out of the apartment that they were in. And it even mentions, like, see Defenders number 109, which I appreciate. I love those little editor notes, and I miss them in new comics. And it's Gargoyle and Spider-Man swinging through the city, getting to know each other. And so Gargoyle explains his whole, I'm a 78-year-old fool who dabbled in the dark arts to try to save my father's town. And I wound up being turned into this gargoyle creature. I have read the Defenders through in its entirety once before when I was doing my great X-Men reread, because Beast and eventually Angel and Iceman joined the team. And so I kind of pulled Defenders into it because there were X-Men characters, and I was kind of like, where were they while this was going on? So I've read all of this Defender stuff, and I can say with certainty that Gargoyle is by far my favorite character. I was like enamored with him. Fingers crossed that Marvel Legends one day makes a figure. It will peg warm, but I will buy one. So they're resting up, just basically hanging out in the park, chatting about their histories. And they come upon an old woman getting attacked by some muggers, and Gargoyle and Spider-Man, Marvel team up to take on these muggers, and they kind of take them out, and the old woman is like, she's kind of down on herself, and so Gargoyle's like, hey, I'm old too, like, you've still got plenty of life in you. And so they start chatting up, and so Spider-Man's like, Gargoyle, it's been great, it's been fun, but I gotta split, I got stuff I gotta do, and so he takes off. And then we cut to Gargoyle winds up going, like, he follows it, carrying her groceries, follows her all the way back to her apartment to drop her off, make sure that she gets home safe, and she invites him in for tea. And she's basically explaining that, like, her family's kind of feeling like she's a little bit of a burden. And during this, her I believe daughter, they're drawn in a way that I don't think they're like, the daughter is still older, I get, which, I mean, makes sense. And so she's shocked by Gargoyle's experience, look when she shows up. And then we cut to Peter. He's going to see Aunt May, and he's like, hey, the last time that I saw Aunt May, we were at the cemetery for Uncle Ben. And this is important when I bring up the next issue, because it plays into my mania. So he shows up because they're planning on, like, Aunt May and Nate Rubansky, her fiance, are trying to leave the nursing home, and they're going to go back and live in the Queen's house, and turn it into kind of like a wayward home for senior citizens, I guess, like where they can all hang out. And so when Peter runs into the room, May's sobbing, and she's like, Nathan's gone. And Peter's like, he's dead. It's hilarious, because, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, he's pretty cold about it. And she's like, no, he just left this note where he was basically, like, useless and didn't want to, be a burden. And so you can already see where these two stories, this team up is gonna connect. So Pete's like, I'm gonna go find him, because he just sort of took Nate. He's a nice guy, but he's like kind of sensitive. Every story with him is like him, he gets everybody involved in Doc Ock shenanigans a few issues ago, and now he's run away from the nursing home and making poor Aunt May cry. So then we come upon, like, it turns out Nate is just going on a, like, Nate Rubansky memory tour. He has taken one of the people who works at the nursing home to, like, push him around, and he's pointing out old theaters that he used to work in, and because I think he's an old vaudeville guy. So he's, like, taking him through this and kind of reliving memory lane. And while they're doing this, it's not in the best part of town, and so they get attacked by some street toughs, and the orderly that is pushing him splits, leaving wheelchair-bound Nate Rubansky to take on 6 or 7 dudes with switchblades. So then we cut back to the Gargoyle portion of this, where the mother and daughter are kind of going at it about this, and, like, and Gargoyle's like, hey, like, everybody settle down, and he winds up taking them, like, on a flight. He, like, picks them both up, and they go around the city, and there's this really, like, great page of Gargoyle just explaining to them all of the facets of New York City and the wide variety of age ranges of people out there living full lives, and kind of convinces the two of them to, like, patch things up and that they have purpose even in their older age. So then we cut back to these guys giving Nathan the business. Peter shows up and, does his Spider-Man thing of taking them on. And he's right about to take down the last 2 guys that are threatening Nathan when Aunt May tracks him down, and she winds up clobbering one of the goons, and Nathan helps by running in his wheelchair to him. So Spider-Man doesn't even have to intervene until, and this is great, like, the bad guys have Nathan and Aunt May cornered, and Spider-Man pops up behind them, and the goons run off. And so Nathan and Aunt May believe that it was, like, them that scared them off. So that's kind of cute. And so they kind of patch things up. Then we go back to the apartment that Gargoyle is in, and the mother has, like, has patched things up. She's talking about how wonderful her life has been, but she is clearly not doing well. And she passes, and the woman is like, thanks for giving me this last moment and like reconnecting me and my mother. And Gargoyle, you know, he takes off, and Peter and Gargoyle wind up on the top of a building just kind of hanging out, and they're both like, hey, can we just sit here and like hang out with each other and reflect on what we've just been through? And so, I don't know, I thought it was a cute, like, it's a fun team up, you know? I don't know, I liked it. So there's that. Okay, last book that I would have picked up if I had pedaled up to the shop on April 13th, 1982, would have been Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man number 68, Hell Hath No Fury, Like a Robot Scorned, written by Bill Mantlo, pencils by Luke McDonald, inks by Jim Mooney, letters by Diane Albers, and colors by Bob Sharon. So, I mentioned that Pete in the Marvel Team-Up issue mentioned going to the cemetery to visit Uncle Ben with Aunt May. And that is important because this issue opens up with this dude running away from something and winds up getting killed by a, like, machines in his, they crawl out of his ear, and he dies, like, while he's on the phone with the bad guy who winds up killing him. And that's how the story opens. And then it cuts to Pete and Aunt May and Nathan at the cemetery visiting Uncle Ben. And you kind of get a flashback to May and Ben's wedding, Pete coming to live with them, Pete thinking about getting bit by the spider, so on and so forth. The reason why I bring this up is I have often talked about the ginormous spreadsheet that I have for the X-Men, kind of explaining where everything kind of falls together so it makes the most sense continuity-wise, tracking all of those characters all over a bazillion titles. So, this book came out the same week as Defenders number 109 and Marvel Team-Up number 119. But clearly this takes place before Marvel Team-Up number 119, which is the end of Defenders 108 and 109. So if putting this in a spreadsheet for this to make the most continuity sense for me, just so you understand this is how all of this works, is this, even though it came out at the same time as these issues, I would read this before a Defenders issue that came out last month where Peter Parker shows up in there so that it flows continuity-wise. Because you should be reading this before Marvel Team-Up 119 because this funeral scene is, the cemetery scene is referenced in Marvel Team-Up 119, but Marvel Team-Up 119 is a continuation of Defenders 108 and 109. So this issue of Spider-Man needs to be read before Defenders number 108. So on the backer board and in my app and on my spreadsheet, I'd be like, read Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man number 68 before you read Defenders number 108. And that's how I do it. It's weird. But let me tell you, when you read everything like that, oh man, it's so good. Anyways, so it's a tiny nitpick, and it really gets, like, editors back in the day were really good about connecting those threads. It's way harder. This type of thing that I do is ridiculously difficult now. Like, it's a little bit easier to do, for the older stuff, because I think editorial kept a tighter rein, and there was a fewer, like, people that were like, oh, continuity doesn't matter, which is dumb. It's dumb. I mean, it's dumb. It's dumb. I can say that. So as May and Nathan leave the cemetery, Pete's walking out. This is where she mentions that she needs a loan from Peter because they're going to leave the nursing home, turn the house into a, we plan to turn it into a halfway house for senior citizens like us. And she's asking Pete to give him some money to, like, refurbish the home or add an addition maybe. I don't know. And they talk about that in Marvel Team Up 119, so it's imperative that you read this before. I'm just trying to make everybody's experience better. So, Peter witnesses this guy getting roughed up by 3 what he thinks are goons outside of a mausoleum. And he takes him on, but doesn't have enough time to like change into his Spidey outfit, so he tries to go easy on him. And the guy thanks him for helping him out. And Pete knows that one of the goons dropped a wallet, and it winds up being an FBI badge. And then he looks up, and he is under the mausoleum of Professor Mendel Stromm, who you would remember from Amazing Spider-Man number 37. From, I don't know, 65 maybe? Let's say it was 65. Maybe. 65, 66. So you get a rundown quickly, like as he's reminiscing about Mendel Stromm. I always want to say Wendell. And so he's thinking about this when he walks by some of the TAs that he works with, and they all think he's, once again, P.D. Parker's in his head, not paying attention to him. He runs into Deb Whitman, who's like, hey, Pete, you shouldn't be here. And Pete thinks it has something to do with like his boss, because he kind of gave him like you really shouldn't be a teaching assistant because you're too much of a space cadet. You got way too much going on right now. But it turns out that Deb's just like, hey, my boyfriend Biff doesn't like you. And so Pete is basically like rude to Deb in this, and then gives Biff the old Hank Pym. And that's right when Dr. Sloan, the head of the teaching assistant department, comes out, sees that, and he's like, you got to give up the TA position, man. Like, it's taken up. You're fried. And like this usually happens to the brightest and best. You've just got too much going on. You've taken on too much. And so Deb's trying to figure out like, how in the hell did Peter just knock out bodybuilder Biff, right? And so she follows him, gets to the roof, and she sees Spider-Man swinging away. And so she's like, can it be? So has Deb Whitman discovered Peter Parker's secret? We'll see. So Peter winds up like going back to, let's see. He winds up finding the, I think he must have put he had the wallet, duh. I was like, did he put a spider tracer on him? He didn't. He had the wallet. So he follows them, and the lady agent is getting attacked by a robot. So Peter helps her destroy them. The other 2 agents that were knocked out wake up and are like, hey, aren't you Spider-Man? That's like kind of a menace in New York. And the lady is like, hey, if not for this menace, we'd all be dead by that robot. So let's, explain what's going on. So they explain that Mendel Stromm's robots have been showing up all over the world, wreaking havoc. And so they go back to the mausoleum. They enter there. They discover that there is possibly a layer underneath. And as they go to blow it with some munitions, the door slams shut and they're all trapped in there and gonna get exploded with this comics. Pete webs it up to build kind of a barrier. A couple of the agents are knocked out, but thankfully Pete has spider strength, so he's, able to get through it or whatever. He goes down there, realizes that like Mendel Stromm's body, when it was put into the mausoleum, it was built into this thing that dropped down into this lab that's there and immediately hooked up to a robot. And all of his brainwaves. And this was the part where I was like, again, because it's like, he shouldn't really have any brainwaves. He's dead, but whatever, comics, right? So his brainwaves get placed into this body. He now has all of his memories. And he's basically like, hey, I have all of Mendel's memories, and he didn't like you, so I don't like you either. And so he sicks some robots on him, as he is wont to do. And Peter eventually, takes him out with the help of the agents. And so they are left like, oh, Mendel Stromm is dead again. So that, again, it was a fun Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man issue. So those are all of the books that I would have picked up on April 13th, 1982. So, let's see. If you've enjoyed what I've been doing, I appreciate that, and I would love it if you subscribed, like the video if you've been enjoying it. I appreciate all of the comments. The whole reason why there's like 2 reasons why I started the channel. It was like, oh, I get to film me and the kiddo going up to the comic book shop and picking up our books, so I'll have a little like video diary of him growing up as we do this until he was like, Dad, comic book sucks. I want to play football, which is fine. And then, I talk about comic books all the time and used to get together with a bunch of pals, but we've all, got lives and don't go to the same shop anymore. And so this was, meant to be conversational. And so I appreciate all the comments and talking about it. So if you've ever read any of these or enjoy them or think my opinions stink, please let me know. I'd appreciate it. Be kind of nice. Put some kindness out into the world. Next Corner Box Classic is the end of April, so I think it's like Daredevil. There's like a Marvel 2-in-1, Spider-Woman, something else that I get. Dazzler. I'm loving Dazzler. So that'll be the next Corner Box Classics, and we will be back on Wednesday with hopefully another bike ride up to the shop to pick up our new books. So thanks for watching, and thanks for taking this ride with us. Bye.